Medieval peasants, people who bathed twice a year and died from splinters, had stronger bones and better digestion than you do right now. Their milk was completely different from the white liquid in your refrigerator. And the difference isn't what you think. Medieval cows were lazy, at least by modern standards. They produced maybe 1 to 2 gallons of milk per day. Your average Holstein today, 8 to 10 gallons, every single day. Now, most people hear that and think progress. More milk, more efficiency, everybody wins. But here's what nobody tells you. When a cow produces 5 times more milk, that milk gets diluted. The vitamins spread thin, the nutrients water down. It's like making a pot of coffee with the same amount of grounds, but 5 times the water. Technically, still coffee. Practically, disappointment in a mug. Medieval milk was concentrated stuff, packed with fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K2. The good stuff your body actually absorbs and uses. And the color? Golden yellow. Sometimes almost orange. My grandmother used to tell me about milk like that from her childhood. I thought she was exaggerating. She wasn't. That golden color comes from beta-carotene in grass. Modern milk looks white because grain-fed cows don't get enough of it. The color literally tells you what's missing. But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval cattle didn't eat from a trough. They wandered wild pastures eating dozens of different plants. Clover, dandelions, wild herbs, even medicinal weeds. All those nutrients transferred straight into the milk. A 2018 study found grass-fed milk contains 147% more omega-3 fatty acids than conventional milk. That's not a small difference. That's a completely different food. The old breeds like Kerry cows and Dexters were tough little animals too. No antibiotics needed, no special interventions. Just grass, sunshine, and centuries of natural selection doing its job. So medieval farmers got less milk, but what they got was nutritionally dense, naturally colored, and loaded with compounds modern dairy can't match. Quantity went up. Quality crashed. Now, concentrated nutrients are great, but raw medieval milk had something else entirely. A living army working inside every glass. Raw milk's living army of enzymes. Here's something that'll make you laugh and then get angry. You know lactose intolerance? That thing millions of people suffer from? Well, raw milk contains lactase, the exact enzyme your body needs to digest lactose. Let that sink in. Medieval people drank milk straight from the cow, and that milk came preloaded with its own digestive toolkit. Over 60 functional enzymes work together in every glass. Lipase broke down fats. Phosphatase helped your body actually absorb calcium instead of just passing it through. Then we invented pasteurization. Look, I get why it happened. Cities in the early 1900s were filthy. Milk sat in warm warehouses crawling with bacteria. People died. Pasteurization saved lives, and I'm not arguing against that historical necessity, but here's what nobody mentions. Heating milk to 145 degrees doesn't just kill bad bacteria. It massacres everything. Every single enzyme, gone. The immunoglobulins that naturally protected the milk, destroyed. Lactoferrin, a compound that literally fights harmful bacteria, cooked into uselessness. By the 1950s, most American states made pasteurization mandatory. And the weird part is, dairies actually test for phosphatase absence to prove pasteurization worked. They use the death of a beneficial enzyme as their quality control measure. Meanwhile, European researchers studied farm children drinking raw milk straight from family cows. These kids showed 30 to 50% lower rates of asthma and allergies compared to children drinking store-bought milk. My grandfather drank raw milk his entire childhood. Never had a stomach problem in his life. Me? I spent years thinking I was lactose intolerant until I tried milk from a local farm. Different experience entirely. Now, I'm not telling you to go chug unpasteurized milk tomorrow. That's your choice and your research to do. But the enzymes your body desperately needs to digest dairy, they were always supposed to come included. And enzymes aren't the only thing modern processing destroys. Now here's where things get really strange. You've probably never heard of homogenization. Most people haven't, but this invisible process might be doing more damage than pasteurization ever did. Back in the 1920s, dairy companies had a problem. Cream kept rising to the top of milk bottles. Customers complained their milk looked inconsistent. The solution? Force milk through tiny holes at 4,000 psi. That's enough pressure to crush a car engine. This explodes fat globules into particles 1/10 their natural size. And why? Purely for looks. That's it. They wanted milk that stayed uniform on shelves. Your medieval ancestors would have thought this was insanity. They actually wanted that cream layer. They'd shake the bottle, skim it off, and use it for cooking. But here's what nobody tells you about those original fat globules. They came wrapped in a protective membrane. Think of it like nature's packaging, containing beneficial phospholipids that helped your body digest the fat properly. When homogenization shatters these membranes, something concerning happens. An enzyme called xanthine oxidase, which normally gets broken down in your stomach, can now pass directly into your bloodstream. Some researchers believe these microscopic fat particles are small enough to penetrate intestinal walls. And once they're through, your immune system doesn't recognize them. It attacks. The result is inflammation, the kind that doesn't announce itself with obvious symptoms, just a slow burn that accumulates over years. I find it fascinating that we engineered a solution to a problem that wasn't really a problem. Cream rising to the top isn't a flaw, it's a feature. My grandmother used to save that cream for Sunday coffee like it was liquid gold. But wait, we've talked about how modern processing destroys milk's benefits. We haven't talked about what's going into the cows themselves. And trust me, that story makes homogenization look like a minor inconvenience. Here's where things get really ugly. Medieval cows wandered through meadows, eating clover, wild herbs, and whatever looked tasty. Modern dairy cows, they're basically eating fast food every single day of their lives. The average American dairy cow consumes around 100 pounds of feed daily, and roughly half of that is corn and soy concentrates. Not grass, not clover. Corn and soybeans. Now here's the problem. Cows aren't designed to eat corn. Their stomachs evolved over millions of years to digest grass. When you stuff them full of grain, their digestive systems become unnaturally acidic. It's like forcing a vegetarian to eat nothing but cheeseburgers. Something's going to go wrong, and it does. To keep these grain-fed cows from getting chronically sick, farmers pump them full of antibiotics. Get this, approximately 80% of all antibiotics sold in America go to livestock. Not to hospitals, not to sick people, to farm animals eating food their bodies can't handle. But wait, there's more. Many conventional dairy farms inject cows with recombinant bovine growth hormone, called RBGH. This stuff forces cows to produce even more milk than their already overworked bodies can manage. The result? Milk with up to 10 times higher levels of IGF-1, a growth factor that some researchers worry about. Then there's the fat itself. Remember that golden omega-3 rich milk from grass-fed medieval cows? Grain feeding flips the entire fatty acid profile. Instead of anti-inflammatory omega-3s, you get inflammatory omega-6s. Same animal, completely different milk. And the modern Holstein cow itself is basically a Frankenstein creation. These animals have been bred so aggressively for maximum milk production that their udders would literally drag on the ground without human intervention. I'm not joking. That's selective breeding gone completely sideways. So we've covered what goes into the cow. But here's something nobody discusses. Medieval people didn't just drink their milk straight, they transformed it into something even more powerful. Here's the thing about medieval butter. It wasn't yellow, it was orange. Like actually orange, the kind of color that would make you think someone added food dye. But nobody did. That deep orange came from beta-carotene concentrated in grass-fed cream. And this wasn't just about looking pretty. That color meant something. Medieval butter could contain 500% more vitamin K2 than the pale stuff sitting in your fridge right now. Why does K2 matter? It's basically your body's traffic cop for calcium. It tells calcium where to go. Into your bones and teeth? Yes. Into your arteries where it hardens into plaque? Absolutely not. Modern butter has almost none of this. And medieval Europeans knew their butter was special. They called spring butter May butter and treated it like medicine. I'm not exaggerating. They rubbed it on wounds. They stored it specifically for healing purposes. Your great-great-great-grandmother wasn't crazy. She just understood something we forgot. Now here's where it gets interesting. The same pasteurization destroying enzymes in milk? It does the same damage to cream before churning. Heat-sensitive nutrients and beneficial compounds. Gone, but not everywhere. Irish farmers still make traditional grass-fed butter the old way. When scientists test it against American commercial brands, the difference is shocking. Significantly higher omega-3s. More CLA, which helps with inflammation. It's practically a different food. A dentist named Weston Price figured this out back in the 1930s. He traveled to isolated Swiss villages where people ate pounds of orange butter weekly. These people had almost zero tooth decay. Their teeth were perfect. Meanwhile, kids in American cities eating white bread and pale butter, cavities everywhere. Same species, same food category, completely different health outcomes. Makes you wonder what else we've changed without realizing the consequences, because butter was just the beginning. The real disaster, it happened to an even more fundamental food, the grain itself. Here's where things get really interesting. The wheat your medieval ancestors ate wasn't just grown differently, it was a completely different plant. Einkorn, emmer, and spelt, these ancient grains had only 14 chromosomes. Modern wheat, 42. That's 3 times the genetic complexity, which sounds impressive until you realize what that actually means for your gut. See, those extra chromosomes came loaded with new proteins, specifically D-genome glutens, the most inflammatory types that trigger reactions in sensitive people. Your great-great-grandmother's bread literally contained different molecules than yours does. And here's what really gets me. Ancient wheat stood 5 to 6 feet tall. These plants had deep root systems that reached down into subsoil, pulling up minerals that modern dwarf wheat can't even touch. The Green Revolution in the 1960s bred shorter, stockier plants that produced more grain per acre. Great for feeding the world, not so great for nutrition. We traded quality for quantity. Again, the protein content tells the story perfectly. Ancient varieties packed 18 to 20% protein. Modern wheat, 6%. That's a 70% drop. My grandfather would call that a raw deal. But the scariest part isn't what's missing. It's what's been added. Modern wheat contains a protein called gliadin that does something bizarre in your body. It triggers the release of zonulin, a substance that opens tight junctions in your intestinal lining. Basically, it's telling your gut to become leaky. On purpose. Now, your ancestors ate wheat for 10,000 years without these problems. The wheat itself has changed more in the last 60 years than in the previous 10 millennia combined. Still, even medieval wheat needed special treatment before it was safe to eat. Ancient people figured out preparation methods that made these grains digestible, techniques that modern bread makers completely ignore. And those methods? They started at the mill. Here's the thing about medieval flour that nobody tells you. Those old stone mills weren't primitive technology. They were actually genius engineering. 2 massive granite wheels crushed grain at slow grinding speeds. The temperature, never above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Every vitamin stayed intact. Every oil remained fresh. Modern steel roller mills, they spin so fast the flour practically catches fire. We're talking temperatures that destroy vitamin E on contact. The healthy oils in wheat germ, oxidized within hours, rancid before the bag even reaches the store. But speed isn't the real crime here. Stone grinding kept everything together. The germ, the bran, the endosperm. Nature designed these 3 parts to work as a team. The bran carries fiber that slows sugar absorption. The germ delivers vitamin E and B vitamins. The endosperm provides energy. Remove any piece and the whole system breaks down. Modern milling strips out the germ and bran completely. Why? Because wheat germ contains oils that spoil. And spoiled flour means angry customers and lost profits. So manufacturers decided shelf life matters more than your life. Makes sense from a business perspective, I suppose. The result is white flour. Basically just starch with the personality of cardboard. It hit the market in the 1800s as a status symbol. Rich people ate white bread, poor people ate the nutritious brown stuff. Funny how that worked out. Then something embarrassing happened. People started getting sick. Beriberi, pellagra, deficiency diseases that shouldn't exist in well-fed populations. The solution? Synthetic vitamins sprayed back onto the dead flour. They called it enriched. I call it a confession. Enriched flour contains exactly 5 synthetic nutrients. Whole grain naturally carries over 25 different vitamins and minerals. You do the math, we took perfect food, destroyed it for convenience, then patched it with chemicals and called it progress. And the baking process itself, that's where things get really interesting. Here's where bread gets really interesting. Medieval bakers didn't have clocks. They didn't need them. Their bread told them when it was ready. 12 hours, sometimes 24, however long the wild sourdough cultures needed to do their work. Modern bread? 2 hours, tops. Sometimes 90 minutes if the factory's running behind schedule. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between medicine and poison. See, during those long fermentation hours, something magical happens. Lactobacillus bacteria, the same good bugs in yogurt, start breaking down phytic acid. Never heard of it? Phytic acid is basically a mineral thief. It grabs onto zinc, iron, and calcium in your gut and escorts them right out of your body. You ate the nutrients. You just didn't absorb them. But give those bacteria 12 hours to work, and they neutralize most of that phytic acid. Your body actually gets what it paid for. And the weird part is, that's not even the biggest benefit. Italian researchers studying celiac patients found that traditional sourdough fermentation reduces gluten content by up to 97%. 97! People who can't touch modern bread sometimes eat properly fermented sourdough without issues. Same grain, completely different reaction. The lactic acid produced during this slow process also predigests starches. Your blood sugar rises gradually instead of spiking like you just mainlined a candy bar. Modern commercial bakeries skip all of this. Why wait 12 hours when chemicals work in 12 minutes? They use potassium bromate and azotocarbonamide. That second one is literally used in yoga mats to rush the process. I tried making real sourdough last year. 3 days to get the starter going. Forgot about it twice. Smelled like a gym sock by day 2, but that first loaf, my grandmother would have recognized it. Your medieval ancestors' bread was essentially a different food at the molecular level than what's sitting on your counter. But the chemistry gets even stranger when you look at what else is hiding in that modern loaf. Let me read you the ingredient list on a loaf of bread I grabbed from my kitchen last week. I stopped counting at 23. 23 ingredients in bread. Medieval bakers used 4: flour, water, salt, wild yeast from the air. That's it. The whole recipe fit on a sticky note. So what are those other 19 things doing in there? Well, high fructose corn syrup shows up in almost every commercial loaf. Not because bread needs sugar to taste good, it's there because it browns faster and costs pennies. Your bread is basically wearing makeup. Then there's potassium bromate. Now here's where it gets interesting. Europe banned it, Canada banned it, China banned it. The World Health Organization classified it as a possible carcinogen back in 1999. America? Still legal, still in your sandwich. But wait, it gets better. Azotocarbonamide helps bleach flour and gives bread that soft, squishy texture everyone loves. You know where else this chemical shows up? Yoga mats, shoe soles. I'm not making this up. The same stuff that makes your sneakers bouncy is making your hamburger bun fluffy. Makes sense, right? No, it doesn't. And the weird part is nobody reads these labels. We just grab the bread with the pretty wheat picture on the package and assume someone's watching out for us. Here's my favorite, though. Calcium propionate keeps bread from molding for weeks. The average supermarket loaf can sit on your counter for 21 days looking fresh. Medieval bread went stale in 2 days and moldy in 4. That's what real food does. It dies. Studies have linked calcium propionate to behavioral problems in children. Restlessness, irritability, the usual suspects. Your great-grandmother's bread had a shelf life measured in hours. Modern bread has a shelf life measured in presidential administrations. But here's the thing about all these additives combined with everything else we've talked about. They're creating reactions in your body that didn't exist 50 years ago. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Your grandparents ate bread and milk their entire lives without popping antacids like candy. So what changed? You did, well, not you exactly. Your gut bacteria. Celiac disease has increased 400% since 1950. 400%. That's not genetics. Genes don't change that fast. Something in the food supply shifted, and now we know what. Your microbiome, those trillions of bacteria living in your intestines, evolved over thousands of years eating fermented sourdough, raw dairy, and wild grains. These bugs had one job: break down traditional foods. They got really good at it. Then we changed everything in about 50 years. New wheat proteins your gut bacteria have never seen. Milk stripped of the enzymes that help digest it. Bread made in 2 hours instead of 24. Chemical additives that didn't exist when your grandmother was born. Your gut bacteria are basically staring at modern food like my dad stares at his smartphone, confused, frustrated, making things worse by accident. But here's where it gets interesting. When your gut can't properly break down these new food proteins, they slip through the intestinal wall partially digested. Your immune system sees these fragments and thinks you're under attack, so it fights back every single time you eat. That's why you feel bloated after bread, why dairy gives you brain fog, why your joints ache on some days and not others. It's not in your head, it's in your gut. The inflammation doesn't stay local either. It travels, shows up as skin problems, joint pain, anxiety, fatigue. Doctors run tests, find nothing obviously wrong, and send you home. Meanwhile, your body is fighting a war against your breakfast. Traditional preparation methods weren't just old-fashioned rituals. They were digestive technology. Fermentation, raw consumption, stone grinding, all of it worked together to pre-digest foods your body struggled with. We threw away the instruction manual, then wondered why everything broke.